I'm Trent Knox. I'm the founder, operator, and creative behind Esports Business Network. And right now I'm joined with by Mike Crossman of Claim Your Fame, and we're trying this out. Jordan Dickow will be joining us shortly. I posted in the Facebook group that we're going to be talking about networking. One of the feedback that Jordan had gave me about the podcast that we've been doing is that our the focus that I have been making hasn't been primarily on teaching people who want to learn about networking how to network. So this meeting hopefully will bring a little bit more insight to what it what it's like to, or what you need to do to network online, since now we're going through this pandemic, and what sort of things you can do to network virtually. Um, so um, it's great that Mike's here because his platform is designed for this sort of connections between people who like gaming, but also are entertainers and creatives. And Mike's been on the podcast before, but if Mike, do you want to talk to this subject a little bit?
Sure, yeah. Like you said, I think it's an interesting time for networking because everything is either online or, you know, via email. And I did a lot of networking in person, going to events, and I know you have as well. I host events as well. So we do a lot of networking that way, and we create a
Mm-hmm.
lot of material to network. So it's interesting because this app that we're designing and developing, it's a tool that helps people learn how to network their social medias, kind of network their brand, create their brand, so that when you're talking to somebody, you kind of have a digital play card of what they're about. And brands are such a big thing of networking now. Your social medias are huge. People are gonna check you out either on your LinkedIn or your Facebook and kind of get a sense of what type of person you are, and what kind of conversation you might have with this individual or this person. And so I think networking is it has changed a lot, and I think it has a lot to do with your presence on social media and the content you put out on social media.
Yeah, and I wrote down five different topics that I wanted to kind of discuss, but what and we'll go back over this when Jordan talks joins, but what about direct messaging and like the cold direct message? Have you um experienced this? Because I know you're pretty active on
Yeah,
multiple platforms, not only your own.
yeah. One of the biggest things that I found out about direct messages is it's almost like email in the sense that it could get lost. I think direct messages get lost quicker than emails because email has that presence, your unread message, um, and there's a little bit more like content to an email. I think the traditional email is an introductory like statement about yourself, what you do, what you're looking to do. And a direct message it feels not. I don't think it's as personal as like an email. And I've received a ton of, and I've put direct messages out, and it just, for me, I guess maybe I'm a little bit more old school, but I feel like it's not as sincere or as like authentic to send a direct message. Now, don't get me wrong. I think it's a quick way to say, "Hey, what's going on?" I like the Facebook Messenger, but I'm not pouring like what I'm doing and what I'm about into a Facebook message. I'd like to gauge like, hey, like an introduction. Here's my email. Can I get your email like in a message so that we can like talk business?
Hmm.
Uh, so that's how I feel about like the direct messaging. I think it's a cool like tool to like really get that email out there because I guess I'm old school when it comes to just having that email, you know?
No, that's actually a good point. I didn't write that down, but email is is one of the most effective ways to you know really get across the message and and do it in a sincere way. It's obviously um I think maybe less sentiment than like a letter. I
Right.
think it's only because it's like in ways it's a legacy version of communication, and so like there's sort of a nostalgia to it in ways. Um, but at the same point in time, it does offer a little bit more. It offers more features than a lot of direct messaging does. So, that sort of aspect is important because, like, for instance, if you want to use calendar or something like that to make sure that everybody's on the same page, email's better, right?
Yeah.
Um, eh, what about like I think it's getting on someone's email in person is a little easier, but what's your approach to like getting someone's email online or virtually?
So my biggest thing is, I think every conversation you have with somebody should bring some kind of value to it, whether you're going to obtain information or you're going to give information. And so, when I ask for someone's email, I obviously give them a description of like what I'm trying to do. And obviously, I go in and see what they're about and kind of give a little feedback on whether, whatever project they're working on. I don't shoot someone a direct message without doing a little research about them first, just so that it shows that you have interest in, what they're doing. Because obviously, we know what we're doing and what we want to accomplish. But when you go into a conversation with somebody and you have a little bit of knowledge of what they're doing and you show interest in it, it goes a long way. And so when I shoot a direct message to somebody, I say, hey, XYZ project looks good. Like, I think you got something going good here. This is what I'm about. I think if we, can continue this conversation via email or, maybe a Google Meetup or whatever, I think we can see how we can work together. And that always works for me because I think you have to show interest in what the other party is doing. If you're not interested and you kind of just want to get your name out there, there's a ton of people doing that. And so I think it's very important to just when you're sending someone a message, make sure it's a two-way street there.
Yeah, and so this system that we're using right now, Facebook rooms or whatever, is new to me, and
Yeah,
I didn't I didn't realize that it also posts to like my personal Facebook, and so that's interesting. I
yeah,
think this platform, Facebook, like if we're taking it for example, it is geared more towards a audience of like people who are friends, people who are connected on a deeper level,
yeah,
people who have like some personal connection, and clearly maybe this is just a technology issue, but and I like to separate what I'm doing in my business life between what I'm doing in my personal life, and when I first approached doing this messenger room, I thought, well, maybe I'll just be able to do it from my personal brand, my Trent Knox as the production company or television or Twitch streamer or
yeah.
whatever you want to call it, and I thought that that's the way this worked, but it kind of works more on a personal level. So the like you were talking about how a cold direct message can be converted into a warmer email and and having a little bit more of a more valuable conversation through email. uh I think one of the things that people struggle with is ask, of course, but on the other hand, you know, I approach email as, something like it's public information. So if someone has published their email, out, publicly, I might, go direct to email,
Yeah.
instead of going through direct message, and that's because of the same sentiment that I think, that you have about email being more, impactful than a direct message, because direct messages can be, ignored. I feel like get ignored more than emails.
Yeah.
Um, I guess it really depends on the other person, because obviously if you're trying to network or communicate with somebody who's an Instagram influencer, you're going to want to, communicate with them where they spend their most time. Um, if you're communicating with like a small business, then it's more, more appropriate to email them, and communicate that with them in that way. I guess it kind of depends what sort of individual you're talking with,
Yeah.
on the other end. Like, where do they spend their most time? If it is Facebook, then, which is like hardly anyone, right? On Facebook, hardly anyone is an influencer on Facebook. Um,
Right.
a lot of people do have like a good number of connections, sort of
Mm.
like, they have friends that, some people have 100,000 friends. I can't imagine them knowing all those people, but
Right. Yeah.
on a personal level. But so they are, to a degree, influencers, on Facebook.
Yeah.
um and then there's some anonymity that comes in and is involved with like Facebook pages, and so it comes down to, I think, what is the goal, um for the person who's contacting an individual trying to get out there, and start doing something similar to the other person. Let's use a streamer, for example, somebody who's, just getting started networking as a streamer, um and they want to stream on Facebook gaming. what would what would you advise them to like start to try and collaborate and get involved, maybe somehow, you know get into their matches, or like get involved in any way, for esports maybe specifically, talk about like
Yeah.
tournaments and tournaments hosted on Facebook.
Yeah. So um, it's interesting, you know, the different streaming platforms offer, a different, I guess, you know, a, the platforms offer a different service for like views, right? So we use Twitch primarily when we like stream our tournaments because that's kind of like the go-to platform for esports that we've been using. Now, when we stream on Facebook, we do like our company stream, like the company owners playing, come play with the owners. Um, like if it's myself, I'll play some Overwatch, and if you want to join in with Claim to Fame or Claim Your Fame, just join us, give us your battle tag, and come play. So, it's finding out what kind of demographic you want to hit on the different platforms. So I feel like Twitch is more, I stream on Twitch on Saturday nights for our company, and
Yeah.
I think it's a great platform. And like you said, it goes back to like I feel like Facebook is more like personal. Like I think, when I post that I'm streaming on Facebook, I feel like I'm posting to like my friends and family, and I'm not
Mhm.
really hitting that gaming demographic. I just
Yeah.
have that feeling when I'm streaming on Twitch. You have to have a profile, you have to go to a separate link, and that's more made for that demographic. So maybe that's my old school, like, the only streaming service was Twitch. So like, and Mixer back in the day, but like I think that, with Facebook, and I see it a lot because it's one of the markets that we're hitting with the app. We're trying to get some influencers, some brand ambassadors on Facebook that game. But I always feel like I'm running into like it's like they're content creators, but I feel like it's more like family friendly stuff, and it's more like geared towards like, oh, come support, your friend, your family type of deal. And maybe that's just because Facebook has that, that personal feel, like you're Mike Crossman and you have 500 friends and they're all family, they're all your family and friends. So, excuse me. So we run into the dilemma that, everyone is either like, if you're trying to collab, like, oh, follow for a follow or come view my stream. Well, excuse me, they don't count as viewers because they're going to probably be streaming when you're streaming or going live when you're going live. So they're more focused on their product. And so it's a very unique dilemma to have. I'm sorry. I got a little under the weather. But, with Facebook, I feel like I use it as a platform to advertise to my friends and family, like, oh, this is what I'm doing. Go to our Twitch channel to see like the real content. I use it
Right.
more as an advertisement platform rather than like a content creation platform. So that being said, we definitely like to have
Hey, how you doing?
people. Oh, what's up, Jordan? Let me just good. So I think Facebook is interesting, but again, the way I see it and the way it works for me and our algorithm is to just kind of promote our other, like our YouTube, our Twitch, and our events like that.
Mike, I know you're feeling unwell, but thanks for dropping in and doing that insight.
Yeah,
And you're more than welcome to stick around and chime in.
sure.
But don't exhaust yourself too badly. So,
I love this stuff. So.
so how does this work? Uh, is there a way to display Jordan?
Yeah,
I see
okay.
Jordan.
No, but in the live, is there a way to display the person on screen? This is odd. I'm not sure how this works. Oh, okay, so there's just a delay. My bad.
Yeah.
Um, so let me get back to this grid view. All right.
Let me get my hat.
Um,
What's up?
so Jordan's now. We're
Mm-hmm.
talking about networking in esports. And we had a conversation yesterday, and we were going to have another conversation, and I suggested that we do this live in the group because I think that what we're going to be talking about is highly valuable, and it'd be good for us to collaborate. And that's the second thing that I wrote down as a method for people to network. But let's go back and talk about the first thing and get your opinion on um, direct messaging, and also emailing, because Mike
Mm-hmm.
brought up email was also something.
1 second. So, number one, both are important. I think that direct messaging might be easier because you don't have to leave the platform. It's kind of more organic for people to stick to Facebook, and and communicate that way. However, like I think moving forward, email is also important as well because that's kind of just how things kind of progress with my, having built my experience and have gotten a few clients on my own so far. That's kind of just how things have progressed. So I think both work. You need both, but I definitely think that currently, and at least from like a personal preference, I would prefer DMing and staying on one platform versus email. I don't know, but both are important. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it goes to a video that I think that me and another one of my colleagues are planning to make. This is more directed towards the people who are introverted, um, and that they, you know, they're now in a situation where the pandemic has put them either out of work or into a new line of work, and they weren't networking before offline, and now they're in a world where um, the the online or virtual networking doesn't have the same intrinsic value or sentimental value that uh, offline networking does, because the offline networking and being in person tends to create these more deeper bonds of kinship or friendship or um, you know and so how do you still get how can you try do your best to achieve this sort of connection, this deeper connection online virtually? And so this is sort of another thing that we're going to be creating a piece of content for, but in esports, because it is it is a virtual and offline community. uh, the level of collaboration, it first starts off with this direct
Mm-hmm.
message or this email or a Discord call or something like that that creates creates this sort of opportunity to offer, um, I would say offer your skill set so that maybe the person that you're contacting has a little bit more experience or is a little bit more established
Mm-hmm.
in content creation or community building or whatever it is, and that the value that you get in starting that that conversation could lead to um, the person who wants to build a community or build a content portfolio a little bit of a boost towards it, because
Sure.
it's hard to do things
Absolutely.
on your own. It's
Yeah.
hard to
No, I've
create
gone,
on
I've,
your own. Yeah.
believe me, like this isn't like the esports business that I'm running isn't my first business, but it sure as hell is my,
Yeah.
it fits me, and it's taken me a while to learn that about myself. But, um, so I think the question is, like, how do you still find meaning behind like virtual messaging and in-person face-to-face networking?
Yeah, I guess that's, okay, so someone who's
Mm-hmm.
never networked before and is trying to understand the value that goes into it, and then why should they network, and also um also what is how can they use that networking? So like what's the connection or what's the reason
Yeah, so the
for
reason
them
for them to
to network?
network is to, number one, get advice from people that are that are at a place that they want to be at. Number one. Number two, they can, they might be able to help you out with opportunities along the way that get you to where you want to go. There's multiple different reasons why you want to network, but number one is like you said, it's really tough to start something, start a career, start anything on your own, because you first need you
Hmm.
like with any sort of job, as an example, you need to sell somebody on you, and that is really tough when nobody knows you. So I think, especially right now,
Hmm.
um, yeah, especially right now, and within with and especially from, well, 2015, let's say 7 years, 10 now, 10 years anyway. Within the last 10 years, it's been a slow but gradual transition into um, having having the opportunity to be able to immediately prove your value by posting a piece of content. And so that is the way the world work. That's the way the world works right now. So that number one is a massive opportunity for people who are I guess self-starters and just like to kind of take it upon themselves to create their own opportunity. But number two, like it's not only like what you know, it's who you know to an extent. Who you know gets you in the door. Who you know, and I'll go back to myself because this is like I'm now kind of in a position that I've wanted to be in. Kind of who you know gets you ahead in the business that you're building. You need to be comfortable with not knowing all the answers at the beginning, and I really feel like that's how people cripple themselves. Not networking. I think networking. I think people don't network because they're afraid to ask for help. I can attest to that. I didn't ask for help with the multiple side projects that I built, and so I think networking kind of adds different pieces to the puzzle of someone's skill set on top of providing opportunities into how to progress throughout your career, whatever that may be. So it's multiple different reasons why you can get multiple different outcomes out of networking, but like first and most importantly, like you can't do anything on your own. I mean, that's not true, but like you can't do everything on your own. As long as you put in the work, your network will help you along the way. Will push you forward. So I really think if people understand that, especially right now, especially with the pandemic, it's vital to understand that digital is where we're at. And this is even this Facebook Live event is how people are communicating now.
Yeah, and so obviously the tools are a bit there's a bit of anxiety in learning these new tools. For instance, like my experience right now, I'm thinking like how do I take what we're making right now and make it more valuable afterward, right? And so like the first thing and foremost is if someone wanted to also be on this group call, just comment below and show your interest, and we'll bring you in to this group call, so that maybe you can ask questions at the end, and we can kind of give some feedback. But again, this group that I've made here, it started, Esports Business Network started in this Facebook group. This is where it began, and even though it has grown off to other platforms, and some of those other platforms have converted to coming and being a part of this community, this is the foundation, and we're trying to figure out how to use the tools that the platform offers us so that we can add more value to this group. It is a little bit strange to me that I am using my personal life to create this, because I'm so used to working with clients building their business portfolios, their Facebook business pages, their LinkedIn pages, their YouTubes, their these portfolios that aren't necessarily geared toward relationship building in the sense of like friendship, camaraderie, companionship. There's just all these things that have a deeper connection than a passive viewer or passive subscriber, or somebody who's that has quite a bit of distance between the content creator and
Right.
the
Right.
it's their audience.
And I've seen it. I actually posted an article about this, not directly about this to the channel, but to Esports Business Network. But I posted an article about how brands and specific and also just like I directed it towards brands, but now that we're talking about it, I've seen a lot of networking, not a lot, but I've seen the opportunity to network within like Twitch channels. And I mean, I think I remember one of my streamers, one of the streamers that I follow, openly said like I'm looking for um, like a video editor, and there was someone there who did it. So it might not be the best
Mhm.
example, but networking opportunities, especially with social media, um, is everywhere. So like there's, um, I guess I want to say there's no excuse, but I also understand that coming from somebody who one had the ego to not ask for help, but also like somebody who initially feels overwhelmed with all this opportunity at my fingertips. I can see um, where it becomes overwhelming and you just don't know where to start. But I mean, it's everywhere, and believe me, it's more important now, now more than ever. It's important to learn how to network. Hmm.
Mhm. Interesting, because I want to acknowledge, and um I want the people that are in this group to realize that I'm equally as nervous and have the same sort of anxieties that everyone else has when it comes to putting themselves
Yep.
out there and selling their skill set, their service, what they do, their profession. Um, I I generally try to differentiate what my friends and family from the colleagues and coworkers. But I know in my foundation and where I started as far as sales go started with my
Hmm.
personal network, right? It starts by you know going door to door selling lemonade, or selling candy, or cookie dough, or whatever it may be. And um and so that experience, as I got older, there was sort of like people became jaded against it, and we're like, you need to differentiate your personal life and your business life. And in many circumstances, that's probably a positive. But if you're just starting out, you need to get your mom, your dad,
Of
your
course.
dog, your best friend, everybody, involved in your projects, involved in your goals, right? Um and so if you're just starting out, I'd say, uh and you're just starting out to network, get your mom, your dad, everybody sign up, but then use that up use that and ask ask for help from the people that you admire. Like you talked about a streamer even has the insight to ask their community, their audience, for some help, like like, I need a video editor, or I need a caster, or like any number of these opportunities. um and inversely, don't be afraid, if you don't have the experience, to say, i could
Right.
I could try it out. I could
Right. And
try it
that
out.
and
I could
that's
Let me
and
see
that's
if
the
I
other
could.
thing. It's
Yeah.
like um I know with one client, like I like you got I've marketed myself as a writer, but I also do sponsorships as well, which isn't necessarily my strong suit. And I hate to admit that, because like I know I'm that's well, no, not that I hate to admit it. That's just where my skill set is at. It's like I can write, I can do sponsorships, but sponsorships, if I were to compare the two, would probably be my weaker strategy. But at the end of the day, I'm the type of guy, and I know, and it's taken me a long time for me to develop not a long time. I've had my gut do it for me, but it's taken me a long time to build up the confidence to be proud of myself of doing this. But like I throw myself into the deep end of and try to figure it out. That's not always the best strategy, but I think it gives you the best experience in um, and what you're capable of doing. So I think between like choosing between like what you're good at and what you're interested in, that's also like the best way to start. Uh,
Yeah. Uh, and this, I guess this goes back to something I got to commend you on as far as in this esports business network group is um, the the questions you've been asking the members and the sort of the feedback that has came from written word. Like I neglect written word, and this is a conversation you and I both have when we're discussing like networking. Is that the written word um, is a way to pose a question that may reach an audience that is more likely to engage with uh, with this sort of um, back and forth
right.
system of Facebook or LinkedIn or whatnot. Or maybe more, this is more so the case for Twitter, but the written word works on a lot of platforms, and don't be afraid to use it on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or wherever platform it is to get the audience to engage in an alternative way. Because a lot of us think, oh, we got to make videos, we got to make Instagram stories, we got to make this like this huge production of content that yeah, I got to be a streamer, I got to be all these things in our head. But it sometimes comes back down to what's the most impactful, and is what can you do that's going to be fast, and the written word is one of those ways, and that's something that you've done well, at least in this group, and in what I understand of your businesses and what you've been able to do working
Yeah,
in
and
copywriting.
that comes from so background on how I've gotten to do that is I was um, for people who want to know like the full background of who I am. I started writing. Well, I started writing in school. Duh. But um, I remember were weekends when my can you hear that by the way? Okay, never mind. Because I'm getting
You're
beeping
what?
on I'm getting notifications on my end. I just don't want it to interrupt this. But anyway, I remember. Um,
No worries.
God damn it! Excuse me. Um, one
Yeah, no
second.
worries.
Let me see what's up here. Uh,
Well, let me look this back and talk about why I think this conversation is good, because um the second thing I find on my list is
mhm,
collaboration as a value. Um, the Your proposition when you go in for a direct message, an email, a Discord message, whatever it may be, like however you communicate to someone, um, the first thing you should be considering is what value can um, a potential collaborator
right.
have with you together, right? It's not um, although one of these things on the list, which I spoke about a little bit earlier, was like volunteering your skill set.
Right.
Like you talked about the editing for a streamer, right? So that's a really a one-way street. Or I mean, at least on one, it's like an 80-20
Hmm.
deal, right? It's not a 50-50 deal. So like 80-20 deals are another thing, but a 50-50 deal in a situation where um you can both create content for each other. Like for instance, let's use um um Charlie D'Amelio, like the YouTube trending right now is like 5 videos of one production day posted on
Yep.
5 different
Yep.
YouTube channels, right? So those they all came together to create a piece of content that you probably wouldn't, you know, outside of if they weren't outside of this agreement to
Yeah.
collaborate wouldn't exist, right? Um, I think this is sort of a newer concept, but it's existed in other mediums like music and fashion and other forms of entertainment, in the sense of like crossovers. So like you'll see a rock artist with a pop star, or like a hip hop artist with a country artist, or like a Nike
Right.
Off-White collaboration. Like that sort of already existed. But in esports, we kind of haven't seen it. It really come to
Not
a
yet.
big fruition.
Actually, I think
Not really.
the one massive event, the Travis Scott event in Fortnite, that was probably the one
Yeah.
music event that the one like crossover collaboration event that made
Yeah.
it into esports. But to your point, so I'd say no. So one caveat to that is it's growing. There's only so I think to your point, there's not many so far, but I'm seeing a trend with especially with music and video games.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So let me jump in here. Connection got a little bit fuzzy there for a second, but um, I think I want to reiterate what I'm trying to point out is like, yeah, there
Mhm.
is a music to gaming crossover,
Oh,
but I mean like an internal collaboration. So, music to music,
oh, okay.
like fashion
Um,
to fashion, that sort of thing. So like in esports, there really hasn't been that. That would be like, for instance, like an FGC fighter creating content with like a MOBA player. So like two seemingly contrasting communities, collaborating with each other to produce a piece of content
got it. Okay.
that otherwise wouldn't exist
Okay.
if these two didn't come together. It kind of does exist to a certain degree.
That
It does
happens all the
exist on
time on Twitch.
Twitch,
But yeah, go ahead.
but it happens all the time on Twitch, but
Right.
that's live content, and it doesn't
Sure.
necessarily get repurposed. So like TikTokers, YouTubers, Instagram models, they do these sort of cross collaborations, but esports hasn't seemed to do it. It's not like you see 100 Thieves
Right.
and a FaZe Clan video. Like you don't
Mm-hmm.
see that sort of crossover. Um, so I think that in esports needs that next level
Absolutely.
crossover collaboration. Um, so that's a point at which I would say, like, if you're just starting out and you are an FGC person, go and try and find someone else who's a just starting out MOBA player and see what you guys can do, like just to cross platform. Or maybe that's like a that's like Romeo or the Montagues versus the Monte
Right.
Cristo. It's like, too far apart. But um, just try and find someone who's doing something different in esports and work with them to do this sort of collaboration. That's what I would suggest, going outside of their comfort zone, maybe in that way. But so I guess we could go, that's the 50-50. I think the 80-20 is important because let's go back to your example, which is the streamer that is propositioning to their audience for an opportunity that maybe they're finding it difficult to find someone, and you're someone who's just starting out. Maybe you've worked a little bit on creating videos. Create a piece of content that you think that you enjoy, and then you know um, offer that as a piece of content to the creative person. Now, the one thing I don't like about this is sometimes sometimes it could get lost in translation, like it just like are lost in distribution in some ways. Like if you send someone a Google Drive with stream graphics or whatever, to say, hey, I can do this, like I can help you or whatever, and the email gets lost, or you didn't open the conversation correct, like right. It's almost a step-by-step process. Maybe you first need to learn um, you first need to learn how to open up a conversation about offering your skill set. So what do you say to that?
Yeah, so like that's something that I definitely believe. Like I've gone so far to the point of offering my services for free because I want to give value up front. I want to show people that
Yeah.
my like that you know I want to show people what I can do first before like any money is involved. So right now where I'm at with my company is that I'm I'm taking some smaller account not I don't want to say even smaller accounts. I'm taking accounts and doing work for like bare minimum to prove to all these people that listen, like I can give you excellent service and provide and over deliver on my product. So I've done several. I've worked for about 3 years up until now, where I've done nothing but like work for free or like work for $1, and that's where kind of my work ethic comes from. It shows my work
Mhm.
ethic, but it's like this is like kind of something that I've always enjoyed doing. But in terms of kind of like having things get lost in translation, I think when it comes to collaborating, communication is like a number one for me. So um, I can kind of so this kind of goes into I can say from taking sales calls, like they go longer than expected, um, because I really want to connect with a person that kind of that has a higher purpose, and so because um, we're kind of on that we're we're kind of both in agreement on what we're working towards. Um, I think that makes it a lot easier to
Mhm.
communicate. Um, I think that makes it a lot easier to communicate. So I think the eight like I think to the 80/20 rule, I think a lot of people should just worry. I'm not going to say work for free, but I think um, they should worry about putting out a lot of value up front, and then when they get that opportunity where they can get paid, make sure that they're able to communicate fluidly with their client or with whoever they're working with. Because if there's no communication or bad communication, if you guys don't even get along, the relationship is gonna fall through. And like um, that's not just a personal thing. Like this is in business. Like I've seen it happen good and bad. Um, I've seen most of my experiences have been good, but like I've also had bad experiences where it just hasn't worked out because there's been like a lack of communication or a lack of trust. So um, I think both matter. Yeah.
Can I
Uh,
jump in here for a sec?
Absolutely.
So, it's funny how like the conversations evolve into, maybe this is just me and I keep bringing it back, but what you just described was kind of your brand, and like you you do like how have you built your brand, your platform, you're getting testimonials, you do it for free so that you
right.
can build like a portfolio. And a lot of people don't understand that, like, that's like the grassroots route of like really
Right.
building up your brand, because not only are you doing the work, I mean, you're bringing value to yourself, you're bringing value to your customer or your client, but you're also like
Mhm.
bringing value to your brand, because not only is that going to lead to just work that you've done, but hopefully to a career. And that's what a lot of streamers, a lot of content creators, they think it's like, oh, I'll just take what's trendy, do it, and I mean, Trent and I talk about this all the time. That's what esports feels like sometimes, where you got someone with some money, and they see like that you could make a lot of money in esports, and they don't take the route of building that foundation, building your brand. Like, what kind of value are you going to bring? And like, is it a two-way street? Is it a one-way street? And I think that's where this like group comes. I think this is a very important thing for this group, is that I see a lot of posts in here. I see a lot of people promoting their stuff. I see questions asked. I see all different kind of content in here, but uh, I think people lose sight in just like posting random stuff in here. And I think, people maybe established their brand a little bit more than others. But I think that obviously a discussion like this would help people understand that it's a grind. It's not just like you said, the last 3 years. I mean, that's like, I know that. I know Trent knows that. A lot of people are just like, oh, I'm going to get into esports, and the whole collabing thing. What kind of value can each other we bring to each other? And
Right.
everybody wants it fast, quick, fast, and I think that's the trending reason why esports is so, you know, some people just you think it's a waste of time because they're just like, oh well, I don't have the money to do it. If it's going to take a couple years, then guess what? I don't have that kind of time. But if you're really passionate about something and you really want to do it, you never know what it might lead to. I started doing events 5 years ago, and now we're building an app to help people build their brand. So you never know what it really, what you're going to get out of it, as long as it brings value to you. And you were making a good point that it doesn't just come overnight. Some people might get lucky, but how long do they stick around? And what are they in it for? And I think Trent. I've been talking with Trent for a while now, and we have that same vision that like esports is here to stay, but you just need to make sure that it's done with a foundation.
Absolutely, yeah.
I want to jump into this. Interesting.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think that's been going on in the group that I said to Jordan, and I'll say this to you, Mike, is that I've stepped away from the moderation to see just how bad
Sorry.
it'll get.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And in the no worries. I do this because I want to point out something, and hopefully the people who hear this can understand this. If you're not doing anything unique in esports, different, you don't really have a purpose. And one of the things I understand, it's really popular right now to be a tournament organizer, to be a team owner, to be
Yep.
yeah, those are the two things. I don't actually think there's enough esports consultants in the business, even though there is and I've spoken to some people who've been in the industry for a long time that they feel like the people are taking away their business. These newer esports, they don't think there's enough. They think that there's not enough space, but I think there isn't enough on that end. But the oversaturation of teams or tournaments asking for sponsorship, it's like everybody has a team, but they're not creating a tool like Mike is, or offering insight on how to network like Jordan does. um, and I'm I feel like sometimes I'm on that side of things of like, oh man, what kind of value am I bringing to esports? Outside of, I do feel like one of my greatest pleasures at a conference or is the meetups. The you know the little offshoot conversations that happen in the conference halls, right? It's those are the things, and that's why I wanted to establish that, because I wanted to, or the Esports Business Network, is because I wanted to continue those conversations, the ones that people aren't afraid to go beyond, introductory
Yep.
one-on-one
I
esports.
like that. There was something else I was going to add, but I forgot it. Oops. Oh well. Nope. I forgot it.
Mike's Mike's going feeling a little bit under the weather, but um, again, yeah, I agree. I think that there's like an oversaturation of certain popular things to do in esports, like create
Yeah, I
teams
remember what I
or
was going to
open
say now, but
tournaments
finish up.
or 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 sell me an esports jersey or merchandise or
Yeah.
something like that.
Well, yeah, what I was going to say is,
Yeah.
like, I, I think I think when it comes to oversaturation, like to your point, everybody wants to become a team owner, like an esports team. Like they're just thinking about competitions. They're thinking about the actual like video game aspect of the industry, um, and like that's
Mhm.
and I think that's a bit too single-minded. I think we're all coming at esports from a different perspective. Um, and so like yeah, you do need to stand out and be different, but at the same time, at least from my experience, like I'm kind of doing it from just like pure passion. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of
Mhm.
people or enough people who do what I do, but they don't do it like me. And that's kind of what I'm hanging my hat on is like if I can sell myself
Mhm.
differently than other people, which is about providing value, attaching higher meaning to my clients, communicating better, not just focused on the product and myself, but also focus on what other people want, or what other people need. I think that's um, much more important to figure out that you know esports esports is something that like Mike said, it might be like some people might get lucky and it might be overnight, but most of the time it does put it.
Mhm.
You do need to put in that sweat equity and understand that for you to get what you want, you need to become well known and care about people and get to a point where you're a trusted authority who cares about what your customer, what your community wants. And I know that's what I'm trying to do. And like I imagine that's what we're all here to do. So I just wanted to kind of hop in and say that.
Yeah.
Because and I know I'd be a dead horse here with the branding, but I think a lot of people, like you said, a lot of people do, the writing, a lot of people have a team, a lot of people make a team, want to be an owner, but like when you really think about it, it's like what teams stick out and like what materials stick out, what writers stick out, and it's really about their branding and how they brand themselves and how they like are they creating a two-way street with their brand? Like does it connect with people? And like you said, you want to connect a two-way street where you're going to bring value, but at the same time you want that to bring value to the
Right.
bring value to whoever you're working with. And a lot of esports teams, a lot of esports startups, a lot of people that are like, oh, I want to get in esports, it seems like it's always a one way. It's like how much money can you invest in us, and like this is your return on investment. And like I think a lot of people forget that people that are involved in esports, they want to be involved. Like they want to be involved in the day to day. They want to be involved in the
Yep.
operations, the marketing. And if you don't want to be involved in that, and you just want to have a percentage of a team, and you want to wear the jersey, and you want to take pictures and put it on your Instagram and wear your jersey around, that's fine. But like I think a lot of teams and players have lost insight on that, and like they're just creating content to create the content. It's not bringing value for them because they'll just sell their 20% to make their money back, and then they'll
Absolutely.
move on to a different venture. And that's a lot of the things that I've been seeing. And I recently partnered up with some guys out in the Philippines, and only because they really like they bring value. Like it's a two-way street. Now, how can someone in the Philippines bring value to what I'm doing, and what can we do? But the conversations that we've had, and the path that they're doing, the path that they're going, I see them being very successful just because they have
Mhm.
the motivation, the drive to do it, and it was before there was any kind of money involved, you know, like so I think a lot of people get lost that like, oh, I need to do this full time, I need to make money, you know, I need to make this my career, and when you start, you know, crossing that line from, you know, doing it as a passion, as a, you know, something that's passionate, to something that's, you know, paying your bills and you know, putting food on your table, that's when like you kind of lose that. I feel, and I feel like a lot of people that have money, you know, that get into esports, and that's what it is. That's what it's turning into. It's like, uh, you know, I had a great conversation with someone. They're like, how can I invest in a team? Like they're not publicly owned. Like you can't go and say, I want to put 10% in, you know, I want to invest
Right.
10% into Team Liquid. Like you can't do that. Like, so like it's like they're privately owned, and like you only have opportunity if you're, you know, connections or you have a lot of money in that industry. But like uh to the point being, like these grassroots guys, like, you know, the sweat equity is a lot of time, a lot of effort, but like where do they see the return in investment? Is it the value that they're making? Is it the brand that they're creating, so that they can sell that kind of, they can sell their product with their branding, or is it just like, "Ah, I bought 20% of this team, when the team makes some money, whatever, I'm just going to sell it off," like, you know, and so I feel like that esports is just that, those are like the draw, it's like the sand, the line in the sand, you know, like, are you doing it for this, or are you doing it for that? And it sucks that you have to have a conversation like that, but I mean, Trent, you know it more than I do, like we get messages on LinkedIn, and it's just like, is this going to bring value to us, or you know, are we just another pawn in the game?
Mhm.
So
Let me, I want to talk about the non-endemic investment
yeah,
aspect a little bit. So, and I just made sure to tag you in this post, Mike.
sure,
Um, and also, um, I'll tag and post claim your fame in the post as well, and we'll do sort of like we'll figure out a good way to remarket this, because I think this is going toward the direction of the content that we've talked about before.
yeah,
And I think there will be a lot of value for this in the future. Now, non-endemic investors wanting to get, to get revenue, or bet on an esports team and recoup whatever investment they make into it. A lot of non-endemic investors get into it and realize that it's the um, not the culture that they want to be involved in. Like it's not their. It doesn't match up with, what they see um, being sold to them by the colleagues that they know in Hollywood, or they know in Madison Avenue, or these people who sell esports as and another person mentioned this to me a little bit more, um, about how esports aesthetic has not changed since 2014. So there's not very much that's new about the way that offline esports is sold, and the money to be made is in a hybrid between offline and online. I think the non-endemic investors that come into the esports industry are first sold the offline version of esports, because they're used to brick and mortar. They're used to something that's tangible. And online esports, such as like um, Battle Battlefy. Am I getting this wrong? Battlefy, the tournament platform that most people use. Is a
yeah,
question. So Battlefy, or Challenge, or Tourney, which is another one for Discord. These platforms are um, they're harder to they're investments that I guess maybe somebody who's a venture capitalist in Silicon Valley might be purchasing, but the non-endemic investors who come from traditional brick and mortar are looking at esports teams, esports facilities, esports merchandise, and they come to find out that they're not they don't want to be, they don't want to be associated with the culture of esports, whether that be, that there's a sense of toxic masculinity associated to it, or a lot of the this is something we're having a guest on the podcast recently, upcoming. I don't want to say too much, but that there's a sense of video games being and can be overconsumed, that some people neglect their personal responsibilities to do video gaming, and this is more towards the consumer and not people like us who have a entrepreneurial mindset towards esports and gaming. But so, when non-endemic investors get involved, they're there's a lack of industry education, and they do need to come and speak with people like Jordan, people like Mike and myself, who are esports business consultants that comprehend where the value is in esports versus where they may be getting in over their head with the culture, the infrastructure, the market cap of esports. Um, and there's also another non-endemic investor, um, type of investor that gets involved, who is actively involved but so disconnected from the culture. Like, they tend to force these ideologies of esports onto consumers, or even B2B, that is somewhat so um, disconnected. It's incredible. Like, I'm tired of being sold that I need a team, or that I need a jersey, or some sort of piece of software that's going to increase my likelihood of being successful in esports, and then being always sold like I'm a player, or I'm a cosplayer, or I'm a tournament organizer or a caster. Like, it's like blanket. It's very blanketed when it comes to sales in
Yep,
esports.
that makes sense.
Does any of that make sense? I don't know.
Oh.
So I think, some of the challenges is that esports is about $1 billion market. Um, Gaming, another whole nother conversation, but something that a lot of the people that I've been talking to lately and I've been saying is, like, one person, one individual could own the whole market of esports. That's not the case. It's not like one individual owns the whole market of esports, but there are hundreds of billionaires. You can even look at Jeff Bezos, who owns a large market of the esports community, a trillionaire. And until esports is not is an industry that not one individual can afford to possess, then we might start having a conversation, a real conversation about non-endemic investors getting involved. I think in my opinion, it's premature to see Coca-Cola invest in esports. It's premature to see Mercedes-Benz invest in esports, Papa John's, Pizza Hut, all these things. But I say that out of one side of my mouth, and on the other, I'm thinking, like, well, these companies getting involved, it is a godsend, because it is a validating factor. It increases the overall acceptance of esports culture, when you see established businesses get
Yeah,
involved.
but
Yeah.
I'll say this: I think esports up even up until this point, because it's been progressing into from the early 2000s with StarCraft and Warcraft and all that fun stuff. up until now. I really think that the big companies don't know how, like to your point, Trent, don't know how to sell to um, streamers and people involved in esports. Like they're familiar with traditional sports marketing and activations and all that fun stuff. And I think
Mhm.
um, that's where kind of like that's where what am I trying to say? That's where I think esports is still new, is because we like big companies might be jumping the gun and getting involved in it early, but they still don't know how to communicate with the regular streamer or video game enthusiast. Like they don't know, they're using what they know to get involved, but like they don't know how to market themselves differently to what esports is going through. And so I think that's where we've seen some sponsorships and some activations fall, and others and much fewer succeed. I think the smarter companies,
Yeah.
I don't know them off the top of my head, have done a good job, but also a lot of them still learning about how to communicate with the esports industry. Now, having said that, to your point on culture, um, I can tell from, again, I come from like the streamer background, that from a streamer
Mhm.
background and being a guy and all this good stuff, that we've that there might be like some toxic masculinity, because I've spoken with um, common occasion that they'll just get completely um, I don't want to say, you know, what am I trying to say? This
I think the word that I like to say is
alienated,
like
right?
alienated or yeah.
But so I
Basically,
think,
yeah.
um, I think to change our culture, and again, I'll use the streaming aspect of this, um, to change our culture and to show even more companies that we are a viable investment that represents their brand well. We need to change that toxic masculinity. I think it is a two-way street on that end. I think brands are jumping the gun and don't know how to market to us. And at the same time, I don't think we do a good job at seeing ourselves, at taking ourselves as serious as we can be, and having even more money poured into this industry.
Hmm. Well, I'm not gonna let the girls off the hook, and I've had this conversation with a couple of different uh women in gaming that want to go professional. It is I don't think that there's a difference between the toxicity
Okay.
as far as communication is concerned between women and men on men or women on women, because I know a lot of women that spread that toxicity towards other women because they don't want them to take over their market share of the overall like potential. Like this goes back to this the whole conversation about just being involved in esports, is that there's this scarcity mindset. People don't think there's enough opportunity to be taken advantage of, and girls even more so, because they serve like 5% or less of the overall industry, outside of being like, your traditional female archetype, right? The pretty girl color commentator, pretty girl caster, pretty girl cheerleader, all the same sort of tropes that you
Mm-hmm.
see in traditional sports, right? um and when it comes to, the one like the few players, Scarlet, being one of them in StarCraft 2, um um oh they just promoted her on Twitch in an advertisement. Ammunition and what she does with Rainbow Six Siege. There are a few professional esports players that are female, or at least represent the female archetype, right? and
Sure.
so like I'm not going to
Sure.
let them off the hook. It is competitive. It is esports, so you show up, no complaints, get the job done. It's black and white in that sense. And I think the only reason why, to a certain degree this comes up is because uh again, esports is being belittled to be
Right.
just entertainment, right? It's not uh validated enough as traditional sports or poker
Darts.
or
I'm kidding. Even darts.
Olympics,
Yeah.
yeah, the Olympics, or darts, yeah, right. And so like that aspect, I don't want to let professional esports female players off the hook in that sense, that they just do this cop out that that the toxic masculinity is somehow preventing them from being an extraordinary player that supersedes this sort of gatekeeping that comes in form of a toxic masculinity. And I just don't want that to be that. I just don't think that is the case. I understand like that that there is a sense of empathy that needs to come towards everyone in that case. Like I think there is a whole lot of gatekeeping, in the sense is if you don't look like the establishment or people who have been tenured for 10 years in esports, then they don't necessarily uh, they don't make it easy
Hmm.
for you to succeed in the industry. So, for instance, like the emerging market in India, the emerging market in South America, it'll be way more difficult for them to migrate to the U.S. market, because the U.S. market is going to be there's going to be some intentional gatekeeping for them to climb the ladder. Whereas actually, in some ways, this is actually, just because of other industries, this sort of gatekeeping has started to diminish, given that the tech industry has become very multicultural, and so then subsequently you'll see multi-generational wealth go into the Indian market, the South American market, the Philippines, and then those subsequent generations being more involved in gaming and esports and technology, because again, esports is a sub culture of technology,
Right.
gaming, and then esports, right? So often I think what we lead into is, uh, and this is another point on my networking thing, is building your own community that showcases the diversity, the inclusiveness that you as an individual, and then as a member of that community, want to achieve. So I think, at this time, if you want to be at the top of esports professionally, it is complicated. It's very difficult because you have to be associated to an establishment, of brands that have basically rebranded tens of 20 times. You got the MLG, which is now the Overwatch League. You've got um, you've got well, now this is now rebranding to the old brand, Optic Gaming, becoming the Huntsman, then
Hmm.
now becoming the Optic Gaming again, because Hex buys the company back. You've got a subsex, like you see Nade Shot, or Matt Haig, branching off from Optic to create 100 Thieves. You've got the long tenures of Team Liquid, C9, and TSM. So some of these organizations just have been around for a long time, and then subsequently, in addition to that, a problem that esports has is that there's no universal system. There's Each developer owns the football. So um, Blizzard owning Overwatch or Call of Duty, or Riot owning League of Legends and Valorant. You have to play by
Play
you
it by
have to
ear. That's case by case.
essentially. Oh no, not only that, but play it
Right. Okay.
by their rules, right? so if you don't fit the if you a lot of times if you don't fit the characteristic that Riot wants of an esports player, then it'll be majorly complicated or hard for you to grow on the ladder and become a face of League of Legends. They have a vested interest in making it not so that you can be so for instance, like this is a case in point would
Yep.
be Tyler One, right? For a long time, the way they saw him as toxic masculinity, right? So they made a vested interest to disconnect from him, like to distance themselves from him, so that Tyler One wasn't associated with League of Legends. Now, for that was like I think 3 to 5 years or something like that at that period of time, and since then, um, he had to change, which I don't necessarily think, you know, I don't necessarily think it was for the better. I think it was for, to appease advertisers. Going back to something else we said earlier, is like esports is so centered on what can bigger brands do for esports, rather than how can how can it can find sources of revenue from an expanded uh, an expanded source of alternative sources. Now it does that internally, sort of like we get G Fuel or HyperX or sort of some endemic brands, but we just for some odd reason there's an extent to the top. There's an extent from the
Right.
establishment to actually do networking. It's like they lack the establishment. People who've been in the industry for 10 years have given up on expanding their
Right.
network. Um, so what they've ended up doing is like, okay, they create these ideologies of like, oh, wouldn't it be awesome if Mercedes sponsored us? Then they get Mercedes, but then they never do anything else. It's not like they go to Michelin and find all the parts that go into a Mercedes, and get sponsorship from all the parts that go into Mercedes. You know what I mean? Get sponsorship from everyone. I mean, obviously, there's going to be some of these non-compete um, sponsorships, like, and what's it called? Um, when you can't get another sponsorship from a similar company afterward. But that's neither here nor there. I think that especially from the establishment of esports, they have they've kind of they've gotten soft in their pursuit to grow the
That makes
industry.
sense. I see that.
So this kind of like there's almost like two negative things. One, they're accepting investment from venture capitalists and investors that don't foresee esports being, they don't like esports. That's the thing. They're not entertained by the culture. They're just investors passively looking for a return on their investment. And the other side is they have gotten complacent on uh, on pursuing, growing the industry and seeking investment from, brands that gamers actually care about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
agree
I
with that.
so I think, community um, building is this is like, I go on to an established organization's Discord, right? Like, let's for instance say, I don't know, Team Liquid, right? Well, Team Liquid's a bad example because they're all over the place, but FaZe Clan doesn't even have a Discord. Like, they don't. How are they connecting with their community? They don't even have a community. I mean, outside of like, and I don't know these things. I don't have direct answers to it because I'm sometimes I feel like I'm speaking out of turn here because I'm just not, I'm not their consultant. I'm not there to be like, oh, well, they are trying something, but it's like I hear this second hand or third hand that whatever they tried was a mistake and didn't work out, or I hear that there's an internal conflict that so they decided to branch off FaZe Clan into two organizations, FaZe Clan and XSET. It's like it's frustrating because a lot of us are coming up in this business and or have made or established our name, and it's still sort of um this toxic gatekeeping that happens. It's like this goes. I'm saying this and I'm saying don't give up at the same point in time. Like if you're just getting started, still do your best to like put your name out there and force it. Force your name in there and don't let anyone like, you know, don't let anyone be the barrier to your success. Like that's the thing. Like don't let these guys who've only been around for 10 years stop you from being successful in 20 or even
Mm-hmm.
2, whatever it may be, however long your journey is, right? Build your community and then make it the way that you want it. And um if you're going the pushback, I guess, is going to be where communities like mine, the one that I'm trying to build, see communities um, that are growing off of this toxic, you know, behavior, and I make it more hard for them to promote that. Like for instance, anytime I decide to like, moderate the Facebook group or moderate the Discord or moderate any of these communities, and then getting sort of flack or like pushback for being too hard or too I don't know what the word for it is, but like not maybe someone's posting in a language that by and large the majority of the group doesn't speak, and that one of the rules is don't communicate in anything other than English, right? Maybe that's a barrier. Maybe that's something that, you know, obviously I don't want that to be a barrier. I'd love for there to be um, a transcriber all the time, and helping grow those communities in other nations. Um, but that's hard. It's hard. Like Mike brought up about the company that he partnered with in the Philippines. They're a good example of what works. But I can tell you about 9 out of those other 10 that did not work, and Mike can say that as well.
Oh yeah, and
Um,
I think Trent, I think you're making a great point, and it's hard to like, you know, it's all about setting that foundation, like you said, with the community, and if you set up your brand and you set up like that foundation, your community, I think that's where your success comes from. A lot of people they try esports for a year. They try the streaming for a couple years or whatever. They do it part time. When they get a full time job, they do it part time, and they don't really commit it to it. Like some people, like I always say it like this: a lot of people do esports as like a part time job. Like, oh, it's I can put some events together, I can get some equipment together, and then we can do some esports stuff. Then I can like form a team, and it's almost like it's like your part-time job. Your full-time job pays for that, right? Like
mhm,
you're working a full-time job to pay for that, so that can become your full-time job. And some people have the luxury of quitting their full-time job, making it a full-time, like making streaming, making content creation, making a team a full-time job.
mhm,
But you have to really grind that. Like and like Jordan said, you know, he's been grinding it for 3 years. I've been in it for 5 years. Trent, you've been in I think as long as me, a little bit longer. Like these things aren't just handed to you. Like uh, and you have to really establish your identity. Really build your brand. Showcase your community, and an important thing is like you got to have guidelines too. Like you said it perfectly. Like this group, some people, you let it go for a little bit, and you see how out of hand it gets, and like you know simple guidelines to like what people post and how they post, yeah, you
Hmm.
might lose people, but you're losing the people that weren't going to bring value to anybody else except themselves, you know. And
Right.
I've seen the trend, like they just post whatever they want to post, and they don't care if there's any engagement on it. They don't care if people are liking it. They don't care if it's a conversation starter. They just post it. uh I think Jordan has the most active posts in the group because he brings, like, what he's bringing is content and questions that actually like might pertain to people in the group. And I just see some people just post like, "Oh, I'm streaming tonight," or "This is like content that we created on our website. Go check it out." And
Hmm.
what kind of value is that bringing as a, as a network of, teams, individuals, companies? What kind of value does that bring when you just post random stuff, or your content that you care about in a channel, and that's why I don't take Facebook groups and Facebook, like I said, at the beginning of this conversation, I don't take it seriously in a sense of like esports or gaming or like business, similar to like a LinkedIn, because it's like it's it seems like it's turned into what can I get out of it, and only can it benefit me? Am I reaching enough people? And they don't care if it's toxic, or if they don't care if it's like, too much. They're just gonna shove it down people's throats. And I'm part of different groups, different Facebook groups for esports, and I see that similar trend. Instead of like having a conversation like, what we're having right now, it's just like, here's my content. I don't care if you like it or not. I'm just gonna expose it, because it's when somebody goes to watch a YouTube video on how to build your brand and how to build your stuff, they just like share your content on all your social medias, be consistent, and just shove it down people's throats, and not in a mean way, but just get it in front of people's faces all the time. And I think that, like, again, that's another problem with gaming, esports entertainment, is that everybody makes a show, everybody does the podcast, everybody does, but what kind of value? And that's why, Trent, I think yours brings value, because you're pushing the boundaries. You're talking about things that need to be talked about, where other people are like going off of, oh, what did TSM do? What is Liquid
Right.
doing? Instead of making your own content and creating that value for esports and what kind of value you can bring, you're just piggying off other people, and so I see a lot. I see a lot of shows, a lot of podcasts that do that. Like, what's TSM doing this week, and what do their roster changes mean for esports? It's like, well, that's great, and 1,000 people are going to cover that. But let's talk about the real problems with esports, and let's talk about the solutions on how to like get it. A lot of people want to get into esports. Let's help them get into it, and I think that's what I see this
I
page
think
as.
the I think the toxic thing, that I just think, I kind of like, I kind of criticize myself, and sometimes I look at it, I kind of laugh at myself. I think the thing that they say is so much for you to say, at least for me, is like so much as you were never a
Right.
professional player. Like this sort of
Yeah,
like toxic aspect of like, who are you, or who, like the who
yeah,
asked, meme or whatever. And so like I get that, but like you're right. Okay, I think the thing that I would value most out of the community, and on what the community can do to like add value back to me, is to create content, of their own, their
yeah.
own content talking about their journey. Um, and this is I'm talking about people
Go
not
for
like
it.
you guys,
Yeah.
like the other people in the community members. I'm
Yeah,
talking, I'm talking about, creating more video content of their own, being, creating their own podcasts, creating their own ebooks, blogs, etc. And the content that you're talking about that is being created, it's almost like it's just like this. I don't. It's like it doesn't hold a lot of value. Like it doesn't. Like
yeah,
I see people sharing their streams, and I sometimes I'm like, okay, so this is a tournament. Like I gotta do so much research to understand, like, what is this stream? Is this just somebody streaming every day, sharing to the group, or what kind of content is this?
Yeah.
Content is great for networking, but it is fifth on my list. It
Yeah.
is like like listen, for those of you who are listening and want to know a little history, is like I didn't start the podcast until 3 years after I had already established myself, as someone in esports, like as a videographer in esports, going to conventions and creating content for other people, right? um I started the podcast out of necessity because the pandemic happened and I couldn't go back to conventions and provide my videography skill set to increase the awareness of other businesses. And I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on that, but also a little bit of negative from some of those people who find them who have huge egos in the sports industry. So people who you who've been in the industry for quite some time, possess their own audience in the community, and maybe that's just from a lack of time that they could spend, um, or maybe that's I don't know why they tend to treat new people creating content, with this sort of this gatekeeping or negative attitude towards newcomers. But the podcast was created so that people could still get that real raw conversation about esports, rather than what Mike was saying about, like, the person who's just regurgitating a talking point from some other analyst that's covering TSM or something like that. They're not talking about the business
Yeah,
behind
and
it.
I mean, to the gatekeepers, I'd just say like when it comes to, like, you're presenting a new idea, and like for some reason when the establishment has kind of like set the boundaries of like what the industry should be, and you test that as like a grassroots person or just a new idea, they're going to shout it down because it's new, not
Yeah,
for anything else. I mean, I mean, I can tell that this is
right.
like, you're very intelligent in what you're doing. Like you've been doing this for a long time. um, I just feel like I feel like, and my best example is traditional sports. It's like, if the best example to get into traditional sports is like college degree or nothing, which is like what I've experienced, because I got
Right.
into I interned at a baseball for a baseball team at a time, and then like, I didn't, nothing came of it. But anyway, my point is, it's like I pursued that for a little bit, and like it was really tough to not get into it for a college degree without a college degree, and I'm like, well that kind of blows. But anyway, I feel like this is just another example of there's enough gatekeeping going on with esports, that there's already like a standard of ideas that people don't want to change. Like they want the toxicity, or they want the confusion between competition and toxicity. They want like an ideal person in esports. They don't want anything else. Like they don't, like, as you said with passive investing, they don't want anything to change. They don't want any change. They don't want anyone to challenge their ideas
Right.
of how esports can grow. They want it kept towards this, not so, like, it's not so much niche, but like this kind of like sleeping giant of an industry, because once other people get involved, then their authority is tested. I don't know. There's a number of, yeah, there's a number of,
Right.
yeah, go
So
ahead.
here it is. It's and I've heard this from other people who are tenured, that don't behave this way. Is
Right.
it self-preservation? They feel that if the industry changes, that their value is diminished, and they no longer can, you know, they can no longer uh, provide for themselves have the same quality of life, you know, they want to maintain it in this time in which they were making the most money.
Yeah,
They don't want to evolve.
and I'd say that is the main reason why people play with, um, I guess not an abundance mindset, but a scarcity mindset of like they think they made it. They
Yeah.
think they're top dog, and they have the most of what esports can offer. When in reality, it's just like, oh no, you're probably really good at one sector, one side of esports, and you're either very smart and self-aware in knowing what you're good at, so you don't touch like the other, or
Right.
and in
Right.
most
Yeah.
cases, you think you're top dog, and I think this is what we're talking about. Like you've taken a lot of what the industry can offer and what you're focused in, and you don't want anyone to like test you or challenge you in what you're doing, because anyone who tests you and challenges you in what you're doing, again, like you said, you might lose your livelihood, and that's where I think a lot of business decisions stem from relationships, and a lot of relationships are stemmed from mindset. So I think so. As you guys can tell, like I've now grown my, I'm starting my brand, and but have really grown my point of view on, like, you're not selling. Mike touched on this, but you're not selling um, like your business. You're not selling like your services
Hmm.
as like hard numbers and deliverables. Like you're selling you. And if you're known as somebody who like
Right.
is toxic because you don't want to lose what you have, you're not going to last long. You're like I think we touched on it before. Like you're going to be a flash in the pan. You're going like you might catch a break and be, um, I hate to use the term overnight success, but something like that. You might have your moment, but
Hmm.
like over time, it'll play out where once the industry changes, and it will, like there's no space for that anymore, because at some point the
Hmm.
industry will grow so big that um, there's just too many voices that hopefully are preaching more positive messages than negative. Uh,
Right. Yeah. So I think that, something I thought is that there are companies that are perpetuating these sort of individuals that have this mindset to the scarcity mindset, and the reason why they're doing that, and this maybe goes to like personal conflicts. So maybe those individuals have some sort of dirt
mm,
over somebody's head, that could potentially collapse that organization or that development team. So for instance, like, I don't know how Blizzard got away with this, but they laid off like a good amount of their staff during the pandemic, and then the audacity for them to say that they're hiring
hmm,
during that process. you know um
excuse me.
it's there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, for Blizzard Esports, Riot Esports, the developers, that is nefarious in my mind, and not ethical in my mind, and doesn't that is corporate, in ways. When it comes down to the influencers that are behaving like gatekeepers, I'm surprised. I really am surprised, and the more and more I hear from tenured people about people who are gatekeeping in the industry, I'm like, wow, I can't even believe this person
Hmm.
behaves that way. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't think of that from their personality, but behind closed doors, they're treating people with disrespect. They're saying that they have to they have to maintain their share of the market, by any means necessary. Like, and that sort of behavior to me, is worse than the overall macro of toxic masculinity. Even though I feel like the reason why in the macro we talk about this is because of these certain
Hmm.
individuals that behave this way. You know what I mean? That perpetuate the exclusivity of
Yep.
esports.
No, I think it all comes down to it all stems from um, a psychological, like personal, like I guess like you said, like personal relationships and just like personal. I
Yeah.
and like we're talking about esports, but it's everywhere, man. Like it's breaking, like it's changing
Yeah.
faster, I think, in other industries, but I think esports is going to be another time to. I think esports is small enough now um, where that type of scarcity toxicity mindset um, is
Hmm.
like still exists, but I think very soon, and hopefully very soon, and I hope this podcast kind of starts it off. Is we're going to be in the middle of a transition where we leave toxicity and scarcity and go into a more of abundance positive mindset, because that transition will only build up the sport even more, and will be taken more seriously.
I agree with that, and we need to look at both extremes, because that's an extreme, the fact of the toxic masculinity, but the other extreme, or the extreme of exclusivity, but the other extreme is the we
Oh,
can't be
sure, sure.
overly inclusive, because at some point that it's almost like the end, or the snake that eats its own tail, because there's a sense of like accepting all kinds of random ideas can lead to like an inverse of toxicity, like um, perpetuating sort of these dystopian ideas of like people um, over. So the big one is obviously the addiction, the addiction to video gaming, the
Hmm.
concept of there being an addiction to video gaming, and that um, and I feel this way is like, is there a point to at which you you're not destined, or for whatever reason it an individual overexerts themselves to the point at which they're they're over leveraged in esports, um, and so that can be something to be concerned about, like uh, and and the word is burnout. I think that goes around in esports a lot, is like, so that's another end of this of the spectrum, when it comes to the
Hmm.
individual getting started. But I'm also not someone who's gonna say, uh, I don't want the fear of and anxiety to stop someone from at least attempting to to uh, build a community, build a brand, build a personality, build an audience in esports, because it shouldn't be it should this information should be no deterrent, because the times will change. It will become, you know uh, as the market grows, it'll become more opportunities to support a quality of life. And don't let money, this is another thing, don't let money be the motivator to being in esports. If you have to, um, if you're not fortunate, like Mike said, to make esports your your main opportunity for whatever reason, don't or work
Hmm.
on it as a side hustle, and make it, work hard to make it a side hustle, and whenever you can turn it into a full-time opportunity, do that, and but don't overwhelm yourself, don't burn yourself out in esports. um, what else would I say? One more thing before we let out, and then I'll let you guys have each of your final words. Is that I think I think esports is something that we all need to be very appreciative of. It's a privilege that we have this opportunity in the world, because if things go south, there will be no esports. Um, there will be no competitions like this. And things are pretty bad right now, but they're not the worst. You can still compete online. You can still get involved, and I suggest that you get involved in any possible way that you can.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll let you guys shout yourselves out and do a
Yeah.
conclusion as well.
Well, Trent, thanks for having me on. What's up, everyone in the comments? Thanks for popping in. Guys, I'm Jordan Dickow. I'm the writer, founder, everything in the Esports Business Network quite often. I'm posting content, asking questions, and happy to help you. You can find me at Sports Made Digital on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, Sports Made Digital, all lowercase. And you can find me at Sports Made Digital. I think digital is DIGITA1. I don't know why that's the at, but that's my Twitter. So I'm building out my own channels, and I look forward to seeing you there.
And then like three pieces of like, or three ideas that you think
Three
are
ideas that are
important
important
in
in
esports.
esports. I think I've touched on well, in many in many spats. So I think being very genuine and authentic is important. Um, so speaking of taking care of this opportunity, I really think that when it comes to being genuine and authentic, you will find your own audience. There is enough people in esports for everybody to get theirs, and that's why I say if you're coming into this with a scarcity mindset, you will not last very long. And I don't say that as a warning. I say that with very blunt advice that if you do not if you think that no, you can control the opportunity that's in front of us, I'm sorry, but that's not the way it's going to work. And I'm so like that sounded very mean and blunt, but like I have to keep it real. So genuine authenticity, and then work ethic, man. I mean, there's no excuse for it. I think if you think that like there's such a thing called overnight success, because I've seen it on many different platforms, not just esports, that they're looking like there are some entrepreneurs that ask like, how can I make money quicker? And I'm like, that's not, no, you're not in the right game if you think that's just how this is going to work. So I know I've been very blunt and harsh, but I want to make sure that people continue on the right foot or get started on the right foot.
So authenticity, work
Being
ethic, and
genuine,
what
which
was the other one?
I think being your
Genuine.
true self. So being your true self and knowing that hard work is the factor of all of this. I think everything we've talked about, networking, building a community, posting content, that that all takes work. And I know it's tough, but when you do that, the likelihood of success increases.
Absolutely. And Mike?
Yeah, Jordan, that was well said. I think some of the things that I always preach to people, and I know Trent hears it all the time, is building your brand, setting up your foundation, creating content, being consistent with that content. Those are the pillars of establishing your identity, whether it's in esports or content creation. Any of the things that you do. I mean, even your real life jobs, when you're asked to do something, you perform for it, but you go the extra mile when it's your own, it's your own business, it's your own thing that you're creating. So, the main points are that you want to create a lot of content that is going to bring value, and not only for yourself, but for, the people you're working with, um, and being consistent with it. I think a lot of people kind of see how things go, and then they change it, and they change how their values on different partners they're working with, different people they're working with. And I think if you're just consistent with what you believe in and your values, and you're staying, up to date with the content, I think that's really the pillars of creating you know, a successful business, but also like your brand. And I can't harp it enough, just how Jordan was going through his social media is like, those are an extension of, what you are, what you represent, and like what value you can bring. And that's something that, Trent and I have been doing over the last, I guess, almost a year now. Trent and I have been talking about different things. And I think it's just an important piece that a lot of people are just like, oh, I'm just going to create a team. I'm going to do this. I'm going to start streaming. And then they get disheartened when it's really like, it's a grind, it's, it's something that you have to put a lot of time and effort into it. So, you know, building your brand, showcasing who you are, making sure that you're using your platforms in a positive way. And sometimes the tough conversations can be positive because that's how you learn and grow. So, I don't want people to think that they have to stay away from the tough conversations, but I think that's where, if you feel like maybe there's a conversation that makes you a little uncomfortable, or you're like, maybe you don't know that much about, you still participate, and you listen and you learn, So I think what Trent does brings a lot of value to people, and Jordan puts it in a great way, that the esports is going to change, and there's going to be a time when, the positivity is going to outshine all the negativity. Nobody's going to really want to be around that kind of stuff, and you want to have your foundation set up for that. You want to make sure that your brand, your identity, is something that is going to lift people up and help promote them rather than tear them down. I mean, that's what I give. I give speeches to high school kids that are trying to get into esports, middle school kids, about using their platforms in a positive way rather than tearing people down. So, those are the important keys in like gaming esports in general. So, like Trent said earlier, we're our goal right now is developing this app. We're actually in phase two.
Mike,
Yeah.
Mike, you're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, sorry, I hit a weird spot in connection. So,
I just want to make sure that they heard what you're about to say. So,
yeah, can you hear me now?
yeah.
Yeah. So, Trent touched about our app a little bit, Claim Your Fame. I know Jordan's on there because him and I have had a discussion about it. We're going to work together on a couple different things. But yeah, the app is completely free. It helps showcase what you're building. It's going to have tools. It's going to have tips, guides on how to build your brand. Different things that you'll get more. Sorry.
Yeah, you got disconnected again.
Yeah, I'm hurting here over here. So, but yeah, the app is, it's still being developed. We have our phase 2 coming out in December. We're adding a couple different things. So, if people are interested in testing it out, getting on there, creating some events, doing some things. I'd be glad to have conversations with people. I know Trent's on there. We do some stuff on there with the podcast. Jordan and I are working on something right now. So, we're gonna have some more content on there. But I'm the guy that is all about like building people up, building their brands, trying to bring value to those things. So if you're interested in that, just send me a message. Make a post that you are looking for help that way. I'm sure Trent, myself, Jordan, would be interested in helping you guys do what you different steps in esports. So, but I like these things. Trent, I really like talking with you guys and getting it out there, because it gets all pent up when you don't talk to people for a while, especially about what's going on with different things in esports. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was gonna pose the question. I think I need to pose the question again. I know this one was kind of like spur of the moment, and Jordan and I had talked about and reset up schedule to do a conversation today. But I said, hey man, why don't we just jump on and bring the value to the audience and see where it leads. And of course, like Jordan and I are working on projects. You guys are collaborating as well. We're working on spreading the love in some ways, love meaning money, however we can, to push this business forward, businesses forward, and the contributions, I guess, they come in from the viewers and the subscribers and whatnot. Greatly appreciate that. And that those contributions go back to furthering the development of sort of these conversations and working with more people and helping them sustain livelihoods in esports. I think one thing that needs to be said is, like, if you're someone who's listening to this that didn't get the opportunity to speak on this, we're Mike and I have discussed, and I haven't yet discussed this with Jordan, but um, I posed the question in pretty much all over social media about having a virtual meetup, sort of like this, to everyone gets a chance to talk about uh, what they're doing in esports and what they think would be best for esports, and furthering the industry. And so still need to figure out how to work out a date for that, but essentially we'd work out a date. I assume, like, for some time it would be a free opportunity, for everyone, and it would be most likely on Discord, and we would schedule it, and you could go. Most likely there'd probably be an hour of free content, and then another maybe hour of premium content, that we would make. It would look sort of like this, depending, how receptive people are toward this concept. I think we're growing. Audience is growing. So if you're in the Facebook group where we're doing this video this time, this pilot for idea, uh, you should follow the Facebook page, because the Facebook page is where the podcast is published first. It is shared to the Facebook group, but if you'd like to be, a guest on the show, please direct message the Facebook page, and start the conversation there. I know a lot of you have, and I apologize for not being very fast in following up with those inquiries, but we'll figure it out. I know that we're booked out on the podcast until the new year, and looking forward to having all those guests on the show. As always, follow us on Facebook. Follow us on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, we're publishing a lot of content that pertains to the industry, from other third-party outlets, and we're working on original content as soon as possible. Unfortunately, it does take a lot of time to create this content. And then the Discord, of course. This is something else that Jordan and I have talked about, is that we want to grow the community and the conversation in the general chat on the Discord, because here on Facebook it is complicated to segue conversations into either a voice call or a video call if you need some of that consulting. And maybe I could bring this up, is that if you're someone that's just getting started and you would like to schedule some consulting, and I pose this to Mike as well. We'll have to have a discussion off air about how Jordan and I, we are contemplating working on creating the Esports Business Network consultancy aspect of this company. And the reason that we believe that you would might want more additional consulting is to further your your um, your experience from what we already create as content, and maybe help you push forward with some of those obstacles that you want to overcome. But feel free, Jordan, to talk about some of your consulting and what sort of services you are
Yeah, sure. So
looking to offer.
I think I really want to kind of hype up the personal boundaries that lead to not posting and not networking, because I, for one, have been there. I know I'll use that as one of my tools to communicate with people, because not not all, I know, because I know and understand that business performance can kind of be tied to some personal limitations. But I can talk about copywriting, blog articles, what I've done over the past 3 years to kind of refine my work to a professional level. I can talk about different ways to communicate, different ways to network on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And also, I think that's it. I can do the same for podcasting, but that'll be the extent of kind of both learning how to post content, discovering like what's stopping you from making content, and also how to network with professionals that have the resources that will help you along the way to get your path started.
Yeah. So yeah, we're working on the Esports Business Network consultancy agency, and sort of mentorship programming, and and of course, like Mike, you're 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 invited to be a part of that with Mike's experience in offline event production and things like that. So if you're getting started and you want to get into that space, Mike would be a great resource to learn about how to, host public events.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. So again, thank you for tuning in. If you want to continue the conversations, reach out to us on social media.
All right. I also want
Thanks.
to say I'm on LinkedIn as
Right.
well. Sports Made Digital, Jordan Dickow, small platform that I didn't mention before. So